Success in business always comes down to people. And in this episode, we're breaking down how hands-on coaching builds stronger businesses, why people issues are at the core of most challenges, and so much more. Welcome into It's Not Just Talking. I'm your executive producer, Vince Quinn, here to help you sharpen your podcast strategy, improve your production processes, and build your hosting skills so that you can put more time back into your business. And today, we're talking with Rodric Lenhart. He's a lifelong entrepreneur. He's a best-selling author. He is a speaker who has built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses. And with all of that, he's been able to become a world traveler, and he's working to send 1 million kids on life-changing trips. Very interesting guy. Here's our conversation. So, Rodric, I actually want to start this interview in an unconventional way, which is me yelling at myself. Because here's what happened. We did a pre-interview, which for everybody who listens to the show and follows me, like I talk about pre-interviews all the time, great value. And I made a mistake that a lot of interviewers make, which is as we were talking, I was so distracted in the next question that I was going to ask you that I actually missed what you were saying to me at one point, which was actually the very first thing you said to me in our conversation, which is semi-retired at 42, which is something that I think 99% of the planet is jealous to hear that. How do you get to a point where you are semi-retired at 42 years old?
Low expectations. We'll put it there.
Answers I didn't expect for 500, Alex.
Yeah. Well, you know, like most entrepreneurs, that lasted all of about 3 minutes before I already had some new scheme I was working on. And there's actually a funny story around that involving a beach in Thailand and my poor girl, Nicole.
Oh, okay. Well, please elaborate. I would love to hear a crazy story about you in Thailand on the beach. Yeah, enlighten us.
Yeah, man. We sold the business. I was in the Carolinas. I was in Charlotte mostly, and then moved up. People always ask if this is a real background. That's really my backyard.
Yeah.
But for those listening, it's about 2,000 acres back there, nothing but wind. So anyway, we moved up here and we took a vacation around Asia. We usually go every winter for a month or two. And we're sitting on the beach, just two of us, super quiet. She's reading books. And I just look over at her and scream. I actually write this in my book. I'm like, we got to give it all away. And she's just like, throws her mango smoothie, has no idea what's happening. And it's, you know, my brain had been going 1,000 miles an hour. And it was the birth really of the book, $1 Million Flip-Flops, of the foundation, Send a Student Leader Abroad. All of that came from that kind of moment of inspiration. So now here we are 2.5 years later, and all those things are a reality. And it's been its own kind of crazy journey, but yeah, the retirement didn't last very long.
Yeah, which is the mindset thing, right? Like, I think when you've got that kind of mentality, nobody ever really retires.
No,
but
just do what you want.
Yeah, which is amazing. So for you, I mean, first off, so what did you do before to get to that point? Before you have this moment of let's give it all away on a beach in Thailand, like what kind of work were you doing before?
Lifelong entrepreneur, man. I was that kid in junior high selling candy after my mom would take me to Sam's Club to buy it in bulk, and selling golf balls at the end of the street to the golfers at the public course. You know, I mean, always hustling somehow or another. Grew up with not much, so figured out really early on that I was going to have to hustle if I wanted shoes or a Nintendo or a bike or pizza, you know.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So I've only had a quote unquote real job for 3 years of my life, and it nearly killed me. I write about that a lot, literally nearly killed me. I write about that a lot in the book, but half a dozen really successful businesses, you know, 7 and 8 figure businesses, a dozen in total. Most of my time was spent in real estate development, construction in the Carolinas for about 20 years. And ultimately could have kept growing the businesses or just sat back. But I like to say I've used up my lifetime allotment of patience. So I hustle a lot of cars and bikes and boats, and I'm always on Marketplace, and it's just like, I'm done. So that's when we decided to exit, and here we are.
Yeah, well, good for you. And so there's a lot of things to talk about, because now one of the things you're doing is business coaching, right? So can you just give a little background of what kind of work you're doing as a business coach?
Yeah, so that all really started. I mean, I don't have kids, but I coached baseball for a lot of years in Charlotte and had kids go to the pros, and
awesome.
You know, they'll catch up with you and be like, Coach Rod, you remember what you were telling me that one day, you know, 18 years ago on the mound? And I'm like, no, I don't at all. Sorry. I love you though. But that kind of impact. And then, I mean, as a business owner, there's people constantly, can I buy you a beer? Can I ask for your advice? They want to know how you do it. And I traveled to 65 countries while I've had these businesses. So it's not like I was just 100 hours a week grinding. So they see a life well lived plus the business success. And that's really elusive for a lot of people. So I think it piques interest. And I helped a lot of other businesses get started just along the way, just helping out buddies and subcontractors and whoever else. So it was definitely something I enjoyed doing anyway. So when we talk about doing what you want, I was on a call with a builder. I work primarily with custom home builders in the States, but I was just on a call before I hopped over to you, and I can honestly say that I do this because I love it. And the reason I'll take calls on a Saturday is because talking to a guy about his business for an hour is energizing for me. That's not work. I work with a lot of younger coaches too. And younger, I don't mean age, I mean newer to the business. And it's something that a lot of people go get a coaching certificate, or they go to CTI, I went to Brown, wherever they go, or they get the $39 Instagram one. but it's that old cliche, do what you love and take a class in sales and marketing. I work with these kids in the foundation, and it's their 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and I'm teaching them the same lessons I teach 55-year-olds. It's, if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And if you come out and say, I'll help you live a great life, nobody cares. But if I say I help custom home builders stuck between 2 and 6 million scale to 10 while reclaiming their time, sanity, and profits, a certain number of people hear that and go, that's me. And that's the only way you can market. So a lot of these folks, they need to niche down. They don't, because they think they're excluding people. It's a common misconception. I watch everybody go through it. I've gone through it in multiple businesses, and because you're not wired to think that way, but ultimately you're trying to exclude 99% of the people on earth.
It's completely true. And that's the challenge that I get into with podcasting, because a lot of the shows that I work with, it's always, hey, we're talking to everybody. And part of the problem is it's the examples that people take. It's like, oh, well, Joe Rogan, like everybody mentions Joe Rogan.
Right.
And it's like
Tony Robbins, like, well,
yeah. Like, listen, man, you fix computers. Like, let's be honest here, So it's like, yeah, let's talk about these things and get it specified, because everybody, yeah, they want the width, if you will. But when you have that depth, like the specialty and expertise of, I know what kinds of software you use and different legal challenges you might face. So the things you can talk about and not talk about, or whatever it is. Like, there's so much that comes from that, the specialization in that way. I mean, it's really a game changer once you start cutting stuff out, because honestly, just day to day, it's easier.
Yeah, it feeds everything else. Once you know exactly who and we get really clear on ICA, even with builders, who do you want to be known as? Who's your favorite customer? I mean, they're already niched down. They're just working with people building custom homes, but it's still beneficial. And you're right, man. You need 1,000 true fans to make $1 million in anything. I truly believe that.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. Like, for podcasting monetization, people are always wondering what the secret is. Like, how do I get sponsors, right? Because they want to go wide to get sponsors, and then it's like, no, you should be incredibly specific so you can sell high ticket items, and that's the game. So, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, this. You are a certified business coach from Brown. I'm a guy with a podcast. But, like, talking about all of this, I mean, some of the other business principles, right, as you're not just educating the youth, but working with these business leaders, like you said, what are some of the other things business-wise that you're, like, really passionate about, strong opinions, like this is, how do you like doing things?
I'm very much about the person. I believe all business problems at the end of the day are people problems. And, you listening to this right now, if you have a business, or even in your career, if you're on the corporate ladder, there's something you need to do right now, and you're not doing it. We all have that thing. And there's a lot of reasons why you might be doing it. Fear of failure, fear of success, the way you were raised. There's all these things that aren't just, here's a neat spreadsheet, we're going to help you scale. And when you can coach the person, they have a better life and they have a better business. It's why, my tagline is reclaim your time, sanity, and profits, for a reason. Because if I can solve for your time, and I don't care what business this is, if I can solve for your time, all metrics go up. Mistakes go down, profit goes up, your ability to scale goes up, your home life goes up, your health goes up. we always need to be solving for time.
It's everything. Yeah, that's the same thing, right? Podcast problem is everybody wants to edit all the stuff, and it's like, you're running a business, man. Like, the amount of time and energy that you're putting into editing this show that can be done in 20 minutes by somebody who's not even like a great professional, like just competent, versus you spending 2 hours trying to take ahs and ums out for a show that has 20 listeners. Like, what do you do? Like, go run the business.
Exactly.
Go do the thing. Get out there. Yeah, time management, man. Small business owners, and like I that was one of my personal challenges at first, because coming from radio, I was an obsessive about everything with how it should be done with this and that, and being particular on production. And once I got to the point where it's just like, yeah, you got this thing, I'm doing this thing over here, and simplifying the time, because all the different processes you have to know, and operating procedures and whatever. It's just like, it's exhausting, man. You just can't. I can't live that way.
There's things only you can do, and those are the only things you should be doing. And if you run everything through that filter, can anyone else on earth do this for less than $500 an hour? Then I probably need to hire it out.
Yeah. 100%. That is like completely it. So, okay. So you've got, I mean, look, you're in an awesome situation, right? Because you've worked with all these different businesses. Now you get to coach people. And what it sounds like to me is, I don't know, for all the books that you've read, is one of them, I think it's Ikigai.
I'm familiar with the principle. I haven't read any.
Yeah, I haven't read it either, but like that, I know that's the thing they talk. I've seen enough LinkedIn posts, Rodric. So yeah, that whole idea of like everything that you do day to day and who you are and what you're about, and finding that central alignment of just, this is what I like to do, and finding ways to actually help people do that and make money doing it. Like, that's the gift, man. It seems like you've got that. And on a personal level, I'm jealous. Like, that's really amazing. But I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're mostly guiding people to pretty much get to the same point where you are.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what it's all about. Anybody who's a good coach. And I use that term lately, but you're sending the elevator back down. It's the guys that come to me, they're stressed. They're usually in their truck, or they literally have a shovel in their hand, and they're doing $5, $6, $7 million a year. And it's like, then you watch them a year later, and they just had lunch with their wife. They're chilling in the office. I get to see it like a kid growing up. Like, it's just this complete transformation. But it's starting with, what do I want my life next February on a Friday to look like? And you work backwards from that. And people don't, again, it's not their fault. We're not taught to think that way. But if I go, okay, what do I want to be in this place? I want to talk to people like you. I want to not start till 10. I want to be done by 4 every day. Like, get really specific about what you want your day to look like, and then build a business that does that, period. Everything else is a no. It's just like picking your avatar. It's when you know exactly who you work with, all the other answers become really easy.
Yeah, which is why, like, your whole branding, right? $1 million flip-flops. I mean, for the book, the podcast, the website, like, everything to be through that, it makes so much sense. It's an easy thing to understand. Like, it's a great vision. So, and that's why you're here, right? Like, I just like all the things that you've got going on. I think it's really interesting. So, one of the other things that you've brought up, as we've talked before, was, and I love this, was when you said the kinds of clients that you work with, you will fly to them. Like, you're going to go, you're going to be on site. So what drove you to do that? And like, what are the impacts that you get from giving that level of hands-on service to the kinds of people you work with?
The summary would be, anybody who follows Hormozy, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do, but it's make an offer that's so good they'd be stupid saying no. And no other coach that I know of, not in my sphere anyway, is flying to their clients and spending time with them and spending time with their team. And certainly not at the cost I do it. You might get a guy that's going to come in for $250,000 and do that work, but, relatively I'm inexpensive. And it's because I want that from my coach, and I want that from the people I work with. Everything I've ever built is what I wish I had 20 years ago.
And so to do that, then, I mean, what is the impact? Like, what are the advantages that you're getting that other people don't? Because for me, it's like, oh, well, I don't have to travel to the office. I can sit here and do the calls over Zoom and everything else. Like, how much better of a relationship do you get out of that?
I mean, think about it. What do you get when you can sit with somebody for 4 hours and you know their dog and you know their wife and you know what their garage looks like? And, my job with people, I'm not in and out in 6 months. My guys stick with me for a really long time. it's designed that I'm the board member that doesn't require an office or a truck or a buyout when you sell the thing. I'm just the guy you can call 6 months from now with a challenge, and I understand exactly what you're going through, and I know your business as well as you do, if not better. That's what I try to provide for my guys. I only work with less than 20 at a time. And going back to where we started this is I love to travel. So I get to go see little cities all over the States. I'll fly in, I fly out for 2-3 days, and that's still fun for me. It's not a job. And I'll either sightsee, or if it's local, we'll take one of the hot rods. I got a bunch of classic cars, so it all becomes part of what do I want my days to look like.
Yeah.
And it's valuable for them.
For sure. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, too, with the travel, because I do want to talk about your charitable work and what you're doing with students to help them and incorporate travel. So there's definitely things to get in there. But it also kind of hinges on the podcast, because for you, with $1 Million Flip Flops, you've got, because it's connected to both. So first off, just give people a little overview of when you started the show and really what the show's about.
Started the show and I launched the book. So the book came out, I guess, about 1.5 years ago now. The book launch was its own journey. Like, I think we talked on the pre-interview, like I didn't know if just grandma would buy the book, but I didn't write it you don't write a book to get rich. Anyone thinking about writing a book, I've lost money if you look at the book as its own business, but it's the world's best business card. And I just had hoped that I could help somebody with my story, with how I ended up kind of digging my way out of a really dark place and ended up here. Because I think all of us go through those things. So, but, we sold a lot of copies on day one, hit number 1 in 7 categories, and got the little bestseller flag. And I was number 1 above some of my heroes, which was cool. I screenshot it and like send it to Taylor Welch and be like, bro, you're number 2, but, stuff like that. But I launched the podcast at the same time, and it was meant to be, I do the podcast because I love it. And I'm on a lot of podcast forums and stuff too. And people always ask advice, what advice would you give yourself starting out? And I'm like, if you're not going to do it for at least 5 years and you're not doing it because you absolutely love it, don't start. There's a reason that the average podcast has 4 episodes. It's not, you have to do it as a labor of love. And for me, I don't niche the podcast down. I do have builders on, but I talk to people from all over the world. And a lot of those people are now guest speakers for the foundation, athletes and, crazy high business people. And it's a lot of fun for me. And I learn a lot. I get to ask questions of really smart people every day on my show. Everyone else benefits that listens, but it's just me having a conversation with other business people.
If you're listening to this, chances are that your business podcast is struggling, but you're not sure what's holding it back. That's why I created the Podcast Compass Quiz. And in just 5 minutes, you'll get clarity on what's working, what's not, and where to focus your energy next. Best part? It's completely free. So hit the link in the show notes to take the quiz now.
Who are some of the favorite people that you've had on the show? What are some of your favorite conversations?
One that's coming out that I'm really excited for, and I've had, I don't know if you remember this guy, but the guy that used to wear the question marks and he sold the books of like how to get free government money, and he was all crazy on infomercials.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew Lesko, he was on the show. So that was wild when I saw him come in. And then like Drew B. Wilson from Call the Damn Leads. And but I've had Olympic athletes and, Nina Sossaman Pogue and some people that have won Pulitzers and, just cool stuff. But honestly, man, it's the normal everyday people that probably don't have a huge audience that touch me the most. And I just had a fella on, his name's Mark Haddad, and he just wrote a book. He was a special forces guy, has crazy stories around that world. And then he was doing private military contracting in Africa. So you can picture the movies of what his life looked like. And he just wrote a book about your soul and how, it's like a really deep book that you would not expect this ripped military guy to be writing, but he's so smart. He's in quantum computing. And it's like, and I just get to sit there and pick his brain for an hour, and he wins, he gets some promotion, I win, it's everybody wins.
Yeah, which is one of those things that I do encourage for people, because it's funny, right? Like a lot of times people want to start the show and it's marketing for their business. That's great. That's a lot of what I do when I'm talking about day to day. Other people, it is just, hey, I'm looking to get information out and I'm just looking to make connections and just have a good time and totally do that. Like there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. You can own a business and in that case, treat the show separately. Like, in your case, obviously it's all under $1 million flip-flops and you get to benefit it for the foundation. But for other people, it's just like, hey, I just want to go out and meet people. I mean, the amount of interesting names and stories and just networks that you can get into. Like, I had somebody just book me recently. I haven't solidified them for the show yet, but just to be reached out by a company that they have some international, I think it's like a pet food brand. And they're coming on and it's like, I don't know fully what this is, but it seems pretty cool. And I would never otherwise have this conversation. It's just, it's wild the places that you get into. And these people volunteer to come on the show half the time. It's not even like you're pitching yourself. They just come to you and they're like, hey, it's like, please, yes, like grab us. If somebody came up to me in a bar like that and was like, hell yeah, man. Like, let's go. You kidding me?
Yeah, it was probably 6 months ago now, but John Hewitt came on, like Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, and it's one of those guys, like I did no pre-work, like I was a real bad host that day, but because I had way too much going on, but he just shows up and he's telling me his story and I'm like, hot damn, this is the guy, like $500 million exit. Like, and we had a great conversation. He's doing like mobile pet grooming now, franchises, like just cool stuff. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. So like the depth of the network and all like that is crazy. So for you, I mean, obviously you get some benefit because I would assume like you get these conversations. Occasionally it could lead to business, but then the other side is, of course, the foundation. So talk a little bit more about the foundation, the kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah. So it's called Send a Student Leader Abroad. And the website is SASLA, not salsa, SASLA, SASLA.org. But the overarching idea is if you think middle school kids who go to Europe with their school, with a teacher, they go usually the next summer and they go all over the world, but Europe's the example I use. And there's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And this is for kids who otherwise couldn't afford this trip. And so they can apply for a grant through Send a Student Leader Abroad. And we have our first kids now. They just had their first meeting. We had Jason Mark Campbell from Mind Valley and Selling with Love. He was our first guest speaker. But they go through a 12-month entrepreneurial program. They all had to submit resumes and business plans. Like, remember, guys, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And 60-second video of the business they were going to start. And this was, again, on the beach that day when I wrote the book. This was all just an idea of what this thing could be. And it was built because I was that kid who couldn't afford that trip. And I remember my mom and dad arguing about it and my dad screaming at my mom that we couldn't afford it. And mom won, as she often did. And, that's what changed my trajectory. It's why I love travel. That's why I've been to 65 countries. It changed my worldview and what my true hope is for these kids outside of the business experience. And just being able to, think about 7th graders are getting to talk to really cool people all over the world. Campbell was in Bali, it's like, these are middle schoolers in Texas. So, outside of that is that I believe that travel teaches you that there's no them, there's only us. That is all 7-8 billion of us want the same things. And when you can get out of your town, certainly get out of the United States and see that everyone's just like you, it makes the news a lot less tolerable. And when people are talking about them and what they did and how they act, and they're human beings just like you by and large. And if we can teach kids that at a young age and have them take that feeling and conversation back to a community that might not be having those conversations, it's the ripple effect. And it's how I hope to leave my mark on the world for the last half of my life.
Pretty amazing. And I know you mentioned earlier just that whole revelation of like, give it all away. So, and if I have this correct, like all the money that you make now is really going towards this cause, right? Yeah. Like it's just completely the book, everything, right?
Sounds like a sales pitch when you tell people it's all 100% is donated, but 100% is donated.
Pretty amazing, man. That's just on a personal level, like good for you. Because for me, I've spent some time, one of our clients, actually, it's a charitable foundation. It's called Junior Achievement. They have a Southeastern PA branch. We're in Philly. And I sat in an event once as a volunteer where these kids were like 16 and they had fully written out business plans. And I had this kid who he's like, I'm going to start an ice cream shop in Texas actually. And he's like, this one area of Texas, it's really hot all the time. I'm going to start it there. There's not a lot of shops in the area. He was mapping out the whole like geographic competition and everything. And I'm like, man, as a 16-year-old to get that kind of help to understand a business, like I didn't learn anything about business until I started one, you know, it's just like crazy, man. It's such a cool thing to see. So yeah, I love that kind of work that you're doing. And for the podcast then, like because for getting some of those people and putting them in front of the kids, like what are some of the people you've been able to present then to the students that are in the program?
People that are doing workshops with us and stuff.
Yeah.
The first four, well, I'll give you the first three. It was Jason Mark Campbell, which he's awesome. I like to give him a shout out because he charges like 10 grand for a keynote, and he came in and spent an hour and a half with these kids. And there's only 8 to give you some perspective. Like, we're starting in one school. We had 120 schools apply. We picked one school in Katy, Texas, mostly because of teacher Jillian, who's a rock star who like helps us with all the kids. And then they submitted that they could apply for this thing. This is after everyone had signed up already, and 300 kids took the flyer. 117 did full round 1 applications, and they had to narrow it down to 25, and ultimately we picked 8. So I coached a lot of baseball. I watched a lot of kids cry when they didn't make their first baseball team. So it was not easy to cut some of these kids. But so these 8 kids, they're going through the program. Jason was the first one to show up, and you can look him up, Selling with Love. Great stuff. Damon Lemby from Learn It is our next speaker. Damon's a rock star. And then Nina Sussman Pogue's coming on. And she was an Olympic athlete, and she won a lot of awards for journalism down in Charleston. And Rachel Gogos is coming on as well. She's got like Washington Post cred and does a lot of book stuff. Like, really, it's the Brand ID is her company. But, you know, just people from all over the world, you know, that get to come in and kind of share a little bit of insight, and they stick around for Q&A from the kids. And it's just really neat.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's such great experience. I mean, just the different fields and everything, because who doesn't dream of, so many kids that love the idea of being a reporter. You see so many like interesting movies and stuff, and then to get Olympic athletes, and just the range is really great. So
yeah, and all of those, to be clear, came from being guests on my podcast. That's why I know these people. So.
Yeah, it's great to be able to have that, because it just makes it so much easier, right? It's like, hey, we talked for 30 minutes. I know who you are. I know what you're about. I don't feel like I'm getting scammed, or cold emails that you get. Like, just the relationship building is a whole other level.
That's it.
So, yeah. So let me ask you this then, too, because the other thing, I know you do show swaps. So when it comes to growing the show, like, let's get that business brain of yours and talk podcast growth here for a minute, Rodric. Like, why are you so big on doing show swaps?
Depends on the guest. I don't do swaps with everybody.
Fair, yes. And I would not recommend that. Yeah.
It's people I want to talk to. To get started, I just tapped my own network from business for the last 20 years, and that's who I brought on. Some of them are just friends. Some of them are other business people. It's just anyone interesting to talk to. But then once the show gains traction, I mean, if you look at we've got 200 and some plus requests last month to be on the show. And I only do 4 interviews a month. The other 4 are solos typically. So, and that's another thing I like about podcasts, kind of a tangent, but it's, I can then use those solos as things to send my clients, things that they're going through, things that happened this week, like why a guy didn't sign up because he was scared that he'd be the weak link. Like, you can talk about that for 10 or 15 minutes. And then that helps the people listening, and it's a tool that you can sell to the next guy that is scared about being the weak link. And it just pushes you ever closer to that 7-hour rule, of sales. And podcast is such a great way to do it. But now it's really about being more selective. And I don't do a pre-interview like you. I should. I've only had a few duds. I've only had one I didn't publish. So I consider, knock on wood, I consider myself lucky. But I can usually tell from there either where they came from or just their general vibe. And if you get videos along and stuff, you can feel it out.
Yeah. Now, from the standpoint of, obviously you have all the success in business coaching, everything else. When you got into podcasting and like really made the commitment to it, was there anything that was like surprising that you may not have expected? Like, what was that experience like to fully immerse yourself into a podcast?
The podcast itself hasn't been hard. I've never had trouble just talking to the camera and whatever. And I had already recorded my audiobook, so I had a lot of like audio. The book's on Audible too. It's like, oh my God, that was an experience. But The most surprising thing I think is that, and this is true for anything, is just that people don't really share it unless you ask them to. It's like even Hormozy still comes on as like, screenshot this and send it to a friend. Like you have to be that direct with your mid-roll to get somebody to actually do the thing. Just like books, reviews are really hard to get. It's just, they're really slow going. I mean, you get people to tell you they're great and you're like, oh man, put that email in a review. Here's the link. And they still don't do it. And it's, and we're all that way, but, that's really it. I think that's why you can't be doing it for vanity metrics, and you can't be, there's gotta be another reason you're going after it.
Yeah. And for you, it's cool to see how it all comes together. Again, just that, it's because you're getting the business reach from it. You're getting the charitable side. You bring all that in one place. So that's the life, man. You're living the life. So I appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today, everything you got going on. For everybody who wants to keep up with you, by the way, Rodric, where can they go and find you?
I'm mostly on Instagram. It's at Rodric Lenhart, RODRIC LENHART, for those of you driving and won't read the show notes. You can find me at milliondollarflipflops.com is where the book and a lot of those goodies are. And then most importantly, send a student leader abroad, which is SASLA, not salsa, Vince. SASLA.org.
There you go. So, yeah, make sure you follow Rodric, keep up with him, everything he's got going on. Great mission, great conversation. Rodric, thank you so much.
You got it, brother. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter to get more podcast insights. That link is in the show notes. And if you're feeling stuck with your podcast, let's figure it out together. Book a free 10-minute chat with me. The link to do that is also in the show notes. Talk to you next week.